what we're going to discuss today is actually writing the equitation pattern. I'm going to show you a few clips from my different students and we'll analyze what they have done right or what they have done wrong. We're going to use the same pattern throughout so that you'll get a good idea. But basically how we're going to start is I'm just going to review the pattern with you and talk about some of the things that you would need to do in the pattern. So generally in each pattern there is a start point. And in this pattern the start point was what they called cone A. So you're waiting at the first cone, and then what you do is you have to walk to the second cone, pretty straightforward. But before you go that far, I want you to think about what's most important in this equitation class is that the judge actually sees what you have to give, because you can't give points for stuff she doesn't see. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure the judge is looking at us. We'll make eye contact, and then the judge will nod at us, and we will begin our pattern. So we're going to walk to cone, from cone 1 to cone 2. 1 to cone 2. At cone 2, we're supposed to pick up our sitting trot. What's really important is that we are on the correct side of the cone as per the pattern states, which is the right side in this case, that we pick up the circle exactly where it stays in the pattern, which is at cone 2 or cone B. I'm going to do a circle at my sitting trot. These equitation patterns aren't usually very big. The circles aren't usually very big on them. That's to add a level of difficulty. Now again, at cone B or cone 2, we are going to change, and we're going to do a circle on this side. And this is where we pick up our rising trot. So we immediately want to be, as we pass this cone, on the right posting diagonal. And in this case, it is the right leg that you're going to go up and down with. What also the pattern states is that you're going to be on this side of the cone. So you can see I've kept to this side of the cone, and this circle is actually includes this particular cone. So I'm going to pick up my rising trot. And because this circle includes this cone, I'm going to make sure the cone is on my left, and I'm back on that straight track that I was when I walked. So at this stage, the pattern says you're supposed to extend your trot a little bit to cone C or the third cone. So we're going to extend our trot. At cone C or cone 3, we are going to halt. It should be an immediate halt with our shoulders in line with the cone. That stage, I want everybody to take a breath. And looking behind you, each direction, because this is an equitation pattern, we're going to back 4 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, which equals about 1 horse length. Now that you've completed your pattern, because the pattern doesn't read walk back, the judge will nod to you, and then you'll follow the directions given earlier on. In our case, we just walk out and down the rail and back into line. Equitation patterns do not have to be complicated, but what they test is the ability of the rider to be accurate, to have good riding, to make sure they can complete the pattern. And as you're going through the pattern, you know, they are going to look at your actual equitation, but the pattern is just an easy way for judges to distinguish who's done their homework and who hasn't. So a couple of quick notes. Look and make sure that the judge is paying attention to you when you go to start your pattern. Actually wait for them to tell you to go. You know, make sure you're always on the right side of your cones, that you've read all the directions as well as looked at the diagram. Not only that, but you haven't read into it. If it says back 4 steps, don't immediately go forward and then back to the cone again and then do the next movement. The other thing about equitations patterns is they don't have to be fast. They have to be accurate, most importantly. But because you're going up to the last cone, have a good stop. But don't be in a rush, or it doesn't stop and immediately be backing up. You can take a second. I usually just breathe out. I've halted, I've relaxed, and then I'm going to ask for the next movement. So a lot of those things have to happen in your pattern for it to look organized. So remember that equitation is about the rider's position and the ability to ride the horse. You could have the naughtiest horse. I know they say that. It looks terrible if your horse bucks. But as long as that buck didn't have anything to do with you, you didn't spur it in the side in that moment, because maybe it was someone who had, I don't know, a balloon popped off to the side of the ring, you won't be penalized for that. And you could have the crappiest horse on the world and still have a good equitation pattern.
Okay, so in this video we have a young rider, and you can see she was right at the cone, and now she's asking her horse to walk from cone A to cone B. She was pretty quick about being on and trotting at that cone. However, she forgot that she's supposed to be doing her sitting trot. These are also kind of some common mistakes that you'll see. And this one was here. She was a little bit too busy looking at that posting diagonal and then thinking about her circle. Her circle could have just been a little bit larger on both sides, but she did get back to that center line. Let's see if she gets nice and straight. So she's fairly straight with her shoulders in line with that cone. And it was a good halt. The horse halted square. At this level though, we do expect to see a trot, walk, and then a halt transition. As a judge, I wouldn't take away points for that. There we go. Now we're on to our second rider here. This is an adult amateur. She stopped at the cone, she takes a breath, and she nods to the judge that she's ready to go. So this was a little bit more forward-thinking walk than the last horse. Very accurate there. Circles a little bit ovally. You can see she gets a little tense. She does get back to her line here. And is she on the correct positioning? Yes, but this circle is, again, a little too small and not quite round. You can see that's a decent halt. I don't think I'd really dock them for not coming up to the cone, but I would dock them for that step forward. Okay, I'd also dock them for a little bit of crookedness. However, the horse is very responsive. When she stops pulling, it stops moving. And I probably, if I were her, I wouldn't have pushed that quite so far. So now in the Western pattern, okay, so this is another adult amateur, and she did ride the show. So she's come up to the cone. She's waited. She's nodded to the judge. She's right at that cone. She gets a little off the line there. Not a bad transition, but could be just a little bit sharper. You'd like to see a little bit more of a step when that rider puts her legs on. Again, this isn't the world. Good. I would have liked to see a little bit more of a stride of straightness there. And you can see here's where we dock for equitations as the hands twist. And she got a late transition. So even if the horse broke, she could have got that transition a little bit quicker. Sorry, I'm also coaching and videoing at the same time when I'm doing this. So nice, decently square. So a little bit nervous standing it there because she pulled and then looked back. I would have preferred a little bit more of a stop and then breathe and then back.
So other than this pattern was actually a pattern that my students had to do this past weekend at a horse show. And it just made me realize how important it was for people to understand what the equitation class was like. Now today I discussed patterns, in one pattern in particular, but equitation can possibly just have a pattern phase. It can have just a rail phase, which is when the riders go around, walk, trot, canter, on the rail, change direction. They may ask for, a canter to halt or some specific movement, but it can also have both. So just make sure that A, you've read your pattern, that you've practiced your pattern before going in, and that you've practiced some of the elements, good transitions, you know, a good halt and a good backup in this case of this pattern. These are the three things that we practice before coming into the ring. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe.